Hello, the Reverend Naomi King here, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about the difference between the Golden Rule and the Platinum Rule. Now, if you're like me, then you were raised with this idea that you should treat other people at least as well as you would like to be treated, maybe even better, then it might be interesting to learn that there's a change to that these days. And it's one that's really about cultural competence, recognizing that not all of us share the same culture, and even that the idea that there's one better culture is an idea fundamental to this attitude of white supremacy, and that's the white culture is somehow better than other cultures. And so much so that we turn other cultures in white culture are those others, and we don't even have to acknowledge that whiteness has its own culture. The Platinum Rule says, treat people how they would like to be treated. And that's really about paying attention to and knowing more about our neighbors, these people that we work with, these people that we care about, these people in our families and who are our friends and that we go throughout our community around, these people that we share this world with. And we really know them on their terms. And you get to be known on your terms. That is, everybody has terms and everybody has culture. And everybody's culture says something about what they value, which includes who they value and what really matters to them, and the appropriate ways that one expresses gratitude, and the appropriate ways that one does or doesn't express love. The thing about having cultural competences, you're probably not going to be culturally competent in all of the many cultures of the world. There's just too many. And so rather than say, well, I know the best cultures, just say, I know the cultures I know. And indeed, you might know only one culture, particularly if you were raised white. And that has a lot to do with this attitude that that one culture might be better than others. I don't agree with that, and I haven't found it to be true. I find there to be lots of differences, not necessarily lots of better thans. So I'd like to invite you to put on the pants of humility and recognize that your culture is one culture among many. And if, in fact, you are from white culture, to know that and to own it. You don't have to defend all the yuckiness to it. And, most cultures have some yuckiness to them. It's sort of what people do. Sometimes we're not our fully best selves. But that doesn't mean we can't respect one another and learn from each other's cultures, and even learn to respect one another's cultures and honor them. That can be a real challenge to some of the assumptions that's underlying whiteness. That there may in fact be other cultures as good or better than whiteness, and that whiteness is in fact a culture. And what whiteness values as a culture is whiteness and white experiences and people who can be classified as white. And that's really what people are talking about now when we're talking about there's a culture of white supremacy. So the Golden Rule really only works in monocultural settings, as we know and can expect that others would like to be treated in the same way that we wish to be treated. And beyond some fairly general understandings of dignity and respect and care, that's probably not always the case. And even when you get down to the specifics, what dignity and respect and care, even how we express our love for one another, is going to vary from culture to culture. Our expressions of disappointment, our expressions of irritation, our values will be different. And that's not necessarily bad. If we're coming from a place of really wanting to live and affirm the dignity of every person, that means recognizing we have cultures, each of us, whether you're from white culture, from African American culture, from Afro-Caribbean culture, you're in another culture entirely. There's so many cultures. And they're not just geopolitically defined. You know, we're talking about ethnicities, language groups, ways we eat, ways we celebrate, our religious practices. You know, this unsaid part of white supremacy is an assumption of Protestant Christianity. You know, the Ku Klux Klan used to go after Catholics because they weren't white enough. So you really want to pay attention to what's assumed in culture. And it's okay to find out how to care about one another in the ways that each of us want to be valued and appreciated. That's appropriate for our cultures. There's not a handy-dandy guidebook, and if there was, it wouldn't be able to cover every circumstance. There's just learning and knowing that even if you were raised white, you were raised in a culture and you have one. It may not be one that you particularly know, understand, or could articulate. And that's your work to do. It's also yours to find out how to really care for your neighbor, your coworker, your students, your colleagues, your friends on the street, your community as a whole, this world in its astounding diversity. There's no easy answer on this other than learning from one another how to really care for and respect each other. And that's hard work. It doesn't end. And yet, if we really want to affirm and promote every person's dignity and know that they have inherent worth, we really need to stop and find out how it is they wish to be acknowledged and treated, what they value. And to do that, you might also need to know your own values and to be able to articulate them so you can have a reasonable conversation. Not to make assumptions. I've seen a lot of really negative assumptions and attacks on people just aren't true, and that are promoting white culture as superior to others. That's not the way into the conversation. The way into the conversation has to begin with, this is how I am, and this is what I know and what I value. What is it that you value? How are you? And to find what's awesome and cool there that you can connect to. And what is different and you can still honor. This is a complex world. And we're not going to be able to undo centuries of white supremacy and imperialism and colonial practices in one night or 1 week or even a year entirely. We can start, we can make headway. But it's really going to take deep commitment from every single person who has white privilege to really go out of their way to learn from and attend to the lived experiences of people who can't pass as white and who won't fit into white culture's expectations and norms. And nor should they have to. If you ask me, why is this planet so diverse? I don't have a simple answer for you, because it's not simple. But from me, for a theological response, I look around at this world's diversity and I say, there's one thing that the Holy surely loves, it's diversity. And whether you believe that that happened through evolution, or you believe that that was put in place from the beginning of time, diversity is part of this world. And one human species is tremendously diverse in our cultures, in our languages, our perspectives, our approaches, and even within each of those, there's tremendous diversity. Think about it. There's probably somebody who looks very similar to you, speaks very similar to you, may even have been raised in the same household as you, doesn't necessarily believe or value the same things, doesn't necessarily eat the same way anymore. Diversity isn't frightening. It just is. It's part of the human condition. We can learn to live well with one another, or we can promote hate simply by trying to not talk about stuff. Silence here really can equal death. So take the time to recognize the golden rule for the helpful tool that it has been in a monocultural setting. And I invite you to upgrade to Platinum, where you find out how it is that others around you, with you, really want to be treated. Thanks for joining me for this today.